Alright everyone, we start off today of course with part 8 of the Ukraine invasion updates. Keep in mind down below there will be a pinned comment if you're watching this video on YouTube with links to several other video hosting sites that I use. Keep in mind with some of the Ukraine sub-stories, I can't cover them on YouTube, and YouTube doesn't like it if you make more than one video a day anyway. Like the only way to grow, ironically, is to make less content. Kind of counterintuitive, but whatever. We got to turn first on this to something that I find really intriguing, which is right now you've got at least hundreds of thousands, the UN says 1 million refugees in Ukraine. You've got thousands of dead soldiers, regardless of the actual tally that's real, between the two forces and all the other subjugate auxiliary groups that are fighting. It's thousands of people. Thousands of civilians dead, I'm sure, by now as well, most of which will be unaccounted for and dead in a pile of blazing rubble. It'd take years to identify in some cases, depending on the kind of weapons used, by the way. What does the legacy media prioritize? Well, I mean, first, Kiev and the convoy there, that's actual news, but also Yachts. Yachts is a big story right now, specifically yachts owned by Russian billionaires. Now, this is interesting, and this does happen during economic problems. If you are really rich, in the tangible investment class of wealth, when the currency is devalued, one thing that you can do is you can go and buy a bunch of luxury shit. Because if it's denominated in rubles and held at the same price, you're paying less. Then your hope is that the economy picks up, the ruble recovers, and all of a sudden the thing that you spent, let's say that you spent 1 million rubles on something. I don't know what that's worth, probably not as much as it sounds, but you've bought some sort of valuable, tangible item that can be traded for value. You spent 1 million rubles on it when the ruble was worth nothing more than dog shit. Now the ruble has recovered to pre-dog shit levels. You still got 1 million rubles worth of exchange value, but now it's actually worth something. You bought it at rock bottom prices. There's a way to hedge yourself with regards to the economy if you have the money to invest. So they're talking about that. Also, the Germans apparently, I don't know what you would call it, seizing. It sounds a lot like piracy to me, although it's in port, so I guess it doesn't count. I'm not sure about maritime law on this, but some random Russian oligarch worth billions of dollars had his yacht in Germany to be repaired, and the Germans now have seized the yacht. Again, I'm slightly uncomfortable with the concept, regardless of other things happening, of a civilian-owned ship being impounded by a foreign government for happening to be in their territorial region at the time, simply because there's a dust-up. Remember, Germany's not at war with Russia. Germany has condemned Russia's actions, kicked him out of the banking system, but I don't think this particular oligarch, correct me if I'm wrong, is a member of the Russian government. I guess the idea is you can just take whatever you want, and then because it's in your country, you can legalize it. Now, Russia's not going to declare war over some rich dude losing a yacht. He'll probably go and buy another one if all of these stories are any indicator. In bigger news, the Russians have taken Kherson. This, I believe, is the second largest city in Ukraine, deep in the south. They're doing better there than in the north, it seems. But they're having trouble getting to Kiev. Now, let me weigh in really quickly here on this. When we get intel reports and stuff saying, well, the Russian convoy is having problems getting to Kiev, it's been slowed down because it keeps getting ambushed. I would be hesitant to believe the Russians didn't realize that if they had an extended supply line stretching all the way to fucking Kiev with a 40-mile convoy on its way, slowly trundling through the winding roads, I have a feeling that they already anticipated ambush and realized that it wouldn't exactly be a walk in the park to get there because it's the capital. It's going to be the spot that's best defended. Nonetheless, I do not believe that initially Vladimir Putin was hopeful there would even really be this kind of war going on. I think initially Putin wanted to simply drop his troops, threaten to invade, force negotiations, which didn't take place, and scare Zelensky into simply recognizing the breakaway eastern regions. I think he was hoping to win this war without a war actually being waged. When that did not happen, I think initially he said, well, I'll move in a little bit. Zelensky will crumble on day. He'll flee. It'll demoralize everyone. They'll dry up. I don't think Putin expected that to happen once he had to invade, but I think he was hopeful that it would occur. Especially in the eastern regions where you do have, again, you have militia groups that are Russian-backed there anyway, able to help the Russians. There's a reason they're doing better in some parts of the country than others. Now it has to be a full-scale invasion, and while the Russians have, in every sense, the upper hand, I don't think as well they expected quite so much resistance. I don't think they expected the Ukrainians to even get aid from a lot of the NATO countries. I don't think they expected virtually all of Europe to solidify in giving them anti-air, anti-tank systems, etc. Therefore, they're facing a force that is considerably larger and more well-equipped than they expected. This means that they have to change strategy. It's entirely possible this initial convoy wasn't planned, but when they did plan it, I think the Russians realized they're not actually going to get to Kiev in a single day. I think that would have been unreasonable. However, I do believe that Putin was hoping to blitzkrieg particularly, and to eliminate as much of the fighting as possible in the first couple of days. Now he is getting bogged down, but this isn't evidence of a larger collapse of the Russian war machine or something like that, although anything can and will happen. But it's certainly not good for Putin, the fact that they haven't gotten there yet. I just don't think that it was massively unexpected, like, oh, haha, the Russians can't penetrate Kiev. It sounds a lot like the Ghost of Kiev sort of stuff. And then leading directly into the big propaganda of the day, which is that we have a tale of two casualty totals with regards to Ukraine right now, especially specifically regarding Russian troop losses. The Ukrainians are claiming it's upwards of 3,000 enemy troops that have been killed. The Russians are saying about 500 men have died. Now, 3,000 and 500 are quite a bit different. Which one is true? I would cautiously estimate it's somewhere in between, but it could be higher than the Ukrainians expect, or even lower than the Russians are claiming. Here's the problem. There are lies, damn lies, in statistics, and I warned people there'd be a hell of a lot of this bullshit where there's no way to confirm. How do you count what is a casualty? Let's say that a Russian soldier dies, but he died because of friendly fire. Is it a casualty, or is it not a casualty? Well, the man's dead, or injured or something, but a Ukrainian didn't shoot him. A Russian person accidentally shot him. He blows himself up with a grenade. He gets crushed by falling debris. He dies of third-degree burns because he happened to be next to a vehicle that exploded after getting hit with too many Molotov cocktails. But he died days later. The Russians are going to take up as stringent and limited a definition of casualty as possible. So, it could be that 3,000 Russian soldiers died, but they're only counting 500 of them. That could be the other situation. Again, we have no clue what the number is. The Ukrainians are going to be more gregarious for propagandistic purposes. They want the world to know, hey, we killed a shit ton of Russians. Because that news, when it disseminates through the ranks, it helps to moralize the soldiers. It gives them a bit of a pep. It helps to improve the image abroad that, hey, we're doing a good job, so keep it up. Keep sending us weapons. We still need them, and we can fight. It helps with the civilian population to calm them down and prevent any sort of movement against Zelensky and the Ukrainians, etc. Meanwhile, back in Russia, Putin, if it were 3,000 dead Russian soldiers, Putin doesn't want to say, hey, in the last week we lost 3,000 people attacking what until recently had been a largely unprepared foe with substantially lower manpower and a lot less armor than we've got. The Russians keep claiming they've got air superiority, but apparently there's no countermanding of the idea that their convoy keeps getting ambushed, so I'm not 100% sure that they've established it over the whole country. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Western, neocon warmongers are saying, well, let's run a no-fly zone over Ukraine. We'll eliminate the air component entirely. Yeah, that would be a wonderful idea, just like we did in Libya. That'll be helpful. No, what it would do is create a bigger mess. Let the Ukrainians handle it on their own. We're not directly militarily allied anyway. There's no reason to run a no-fly zone. And by the way, Russia and Libya, a little bit different with regards to their air capabilities, so let's leave it at that. I think when we see the Bolton types and the Bushites out there clamoring for more direct involvement, at some point we've got to sit back and realize we're largely sitting this one out except in the Department of Logistics and Economics. Economic pressure, sanctions, shit like that, and giving aid to the Ukrainian forces. They have to be the ones to fight. They're claiming territorial sovereignty and civic nationalism and saying, look, this is ours, not yours, to Putin. Well, then if it's yours, you have to fight for it. Because NATO dropped the ball many years ago after Crimea was taken away, did nothing to prepare. What are we supposed to do now? all we can do is put on economic pressure and shit like that. And there are some people who don't even want to go that far. You do realize that this is going to cause major economic repercussions. When Russian banks are stalled out, Russia's economy is having problems. The ruble is interchangeable with other currencies, so it's going to have a ripple effect. Europe now is minus the gas from Nord Stream. There may be sanctions on other Russian fuel sources. Russia could throttle the supply. That's entirely possible. They could be close to scorched earth if the Russians were to come out and say, you know what, we're not selling any gas and oil to you anymore, fuck off. We'll just open the spigot, India can buy more. That would reshuffle as well Indian politics. India has been leaning more and more towards the West after years of basically whining and dining and being kind of friends with China. That could change. You could see regime change. You could see destabilization in India as the result of this as well. Something that nobody's even mentioning. So I thought it was funny that the big news of the day isn't Kherson gets taken. The casualty totals don't line up. This is evidence of the fog of war effect that I talked about. No, it's yachts. They care more about the lifestyles of the rich and famous. What's going to happen with Putin's mega yacht? How much is Putin really worth? Here's the 3 things that Russian oligarchs are doing to expand their wealth during this time of crisis. Some of these groups have lost their minds. I would think that it would be more newsworthy, other things that are happening. It's interesting. It's very telling. I have to analyze it, but really, did that have to be the front page news regarding Ukraine from several legacy media outlets? I don't really think so. That's about all. Peace out.